going on out in Knoxville right now? Because I'm hearing a lot of different things from people. Some are very upset that Tim Banks was rehired or given the extension for being the defense coordinator. Some believe that the team underachieved this year. So let's do ourselves a favor. Let's all just take a deep breath together. All right, good. Now we're good. It was a good year in Knoxville. It was a very, very good year in Knoxville. I understand that the final goal was not achieved, but it was a solid season for Josh Heupel and company. Go back to week 1 and tell yourself this. We're going to win 10 games. We're going to beat Alabama and Florida. We're going to lead the SEC in rushing. We're going to finish with a top 10 nationally ranked defense, and we're going to go to the college football playoff. What would you say? Okay, where do I sign up? I mean, we're okay with losing to Georgia. I mean, who's the team we lose to? Arkansas. Crap. Okay, now I get it. So, I understand why you're upset. There was multiple games that probably you should have won. And then, of course, you have the Ohio State game and how that closed out the year. I'm going to save you the trouble. Nobody was winning that game besides Ohio State. It was a blowout. It wasn't pretty. The way that things ended, it was definitely on a sour note. I completely understand how you feel frustration-wise, but nobody was winning that football game. Not a single soul besides the Buckeyes out in Columbus. And imagine this, if you could, for a second. Say you get Penn State scheduled. Say instead you're now playing SMU week 1 and you're hosting them in Neyland. And then you go play against Boise State. Are you not in the college football playoff semifinals? And then what's the opinion about Tennessee that season? So you got the bad luck of the draw. It happens from time to time. But some Tennessee fans feel like the season wasn't complete. And I completely understand where you come from because of 95% of your team was built off your defense. It was there every single Saturday. James Pierce, Jamad McCoy, what you had at the linebacker spot, defensive tackles were making plays left and right. It was a solid season in pass rush. But then your offense was 50-50 every given week. And it never gave you a 4-quarter performance. And the scary part is that now this unit is a little bit different. You no longer have James Pierce back there. You no longer have the leading rusher of the SEC and Dylan Sampson. You no longer have multiple wide receivers because they all either entered the portal or they all entered the NFL draft. So a little bit different. Tennessee never played a 4-quarter game against P4 competition. That was always off. But I told you guys at the very beginning of the year, said multiple times, let's go ahead, take a deep breath whenever it comes to Nico Iamaleava, which is a big reason why I don't think that I'm putting Arch Manning inside of my top 10 rankings for college football quarterbacks because I have my reserves about him. We put so much pressure on him that he had to take the next step forward. And by the way, he improved along the way. The last 5 games of the season, phenomenal ending. One of the more consistent, direct quarterbacks, but some fans thought he had to win the Heisman Trophy. Some fans said, oh, he's going to average over 35 points per game. He's going to throw for 4,000 yards. He's going to put himself in a good position to where we're punching our ticket to the playoffs. He's the second coming to Peyton Manning. It's like, okay, well, you've already destined him to fail if he doesn't meet those expectations. For my money as a redshirt freshman, did everything I needed him to do. Show improvements, grow as a passer, prove at the end of the year that he was the right guy. And yeah, there were some faults, but there were faults everywhere because Tennessee never played that 4-quarter game against P4 opponents. The run game was either stalled. Look at what happened in the college football playoff. The passing attack was hit and miss. How many times wide receivers dropped balls? The offensive line was inconsistent. They weren't able to create avenues. They were terrible on 3rd down. The careless penalties. All of those things factored in Knoxville that eventually led Tennessee to finish the year off 10-2, and a little bit of a sour feel by some of those down in the program's culture. So I get it, but still, you look at this team. There were so many other faults that came with it that were out of Nico's control. And I understand when you think about Josh Heupel's offense, you're saying to yourself, we're supposed to be explosive. We're supposed to be taking the tops off of defenses. We're supposed to have elite wide receivers. We had a Biletnikoff winner here 2 years ago, and that's fine. But sometimes it takes a little bit of time. And for my money, I know what people are saying. Oh, we're supposed to be a certain brand of football. No, you're not. You can be whatever brand you want to be. The question is, what brand do you want to be next season? Do you want to be one known like in the 90s when you had guys like Reggie White, and Al Wilson, and Eric Berry, and Leonard Little defensively? Because you still have some of those dudes playing back next year for Tim Banks. Or do you want to be an up-tempo offense? Now, the best thing is, could you have both and meet in the middle? Maybe instead of having a top 10 rushing attack, you have a top 25 rushing attack, but instead of having the 51st ranked pass attack, you have a 30 ranked pass attack. Maybe instead of having the number 1 scoring defense, you have the number 14 scoring defense, but your number 61st pass defense ends up turning into a top 20 pass defense. Maybe it's little things like that to where you meet in the middle and 10-3 is still on the horizon. But SEC Unfiltered is proudly partnered with FanDuel. For the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel takes the NFL playoffs to the next level. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's $300 in bonus bets if you win with your first $5 bet. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need, from live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. What's not to love? Just visit FanDuel.com/SECU to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/SECU. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and older or present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 deposit required. A bonus issued with non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after the receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE NY or text HOPE NY in New York. Okay, back to the show. But you want to be able to be a team that is up-tempo, scores a lot of points, wins with repetition, consistently puts on drives, and defensively you attack the backfield while giving speeds to your DBs to give a breather. And I think all that's possible next year. I still think that Tennessee, with what they have returning, is in a good spot. Remember, this was the deepest defensive line team in college football for 2024. More importantly, you're asking more out of your quarterback and Nico Iamaleava to step on up in 2025. I absolutely think that he can do that, especially with what you have returning at wide receiver. You got to have a second punch. At the end of the day, Tennessee has got to have a second punch, because you know what worked for teams like Texas and worked for Ohio State, and even somewhat you can throw in Penn State and Notre Dame. They had that second punch where if things go wrong for your offense, or things go wrong and something's not working on one side, you can pivot. And if that's possible, who knows how far Tennessee can go. If you can have a good passing attack and a stable run game where a guy like Star Thomas comes on in, or Peyton Lewis runs for 250 yards and your offensive passing attack finishes with 250, you'll take that and be content. Maybe instead you got to go ahead and trust that your passing attack one game gets you 375 yards and you're only running for 60. You're okay with that because you have your secondary punch. Nico has to be that secondary punch. And there's a lot to like about Nico. There's a lot to say that he has improved on, and more importantly, things that he will continue to improve on. I'm very high on what the season can be. But you got to do those little things different. Things like being able to take that next step forward with the deep ball. Your decision-making's got to step up. Your three-step drawback, you have to have a better read of the defense. You got to be willing to tuck and run. You got to know your situations. You got to know where you are on the field. And those are things that Hendon Hooker did that turned Hendon Hooker into one of the biggest names in the SEC, and for my money, a Heisman Trophy finalist. Should have been in New York City, even with a torn ACL. But because you're not going to have that run game that you did next year. But he was still a freshman, so let's give him a little bit of credit. Let's go ahead and say, because of without having that run game, and because of he was a first-year player, he can take that next step forward. You may also need your wide receivers to step on up. Because remember back in 2022, the Vols were an offensive juggernaut. If they would have made the college football playoff, I would have had high hopes for them to actually win multiple games. I would have had high hopes for them to potentially, in a 12-team playoff format, with what you had with Cedric Tillman, what you had with Ryan Keaton, what you had with Squirrel White, you would be very good. You would be in, for my money, probably one of the more explosive attacks, especially if you had a healthy Hendon Hooker. The last two seasons have been hit and miss of wide receiver and quarterback connections. And I'm not saying that they weren't trying, and I'm not saying that you didn't have help from Hendon Hooker, from Joe Milton or Nico making plays, but nobody was really taken over as that enforcer. And a lot of these guys are gone now. Dante Thornton's off to the NFL. Brit McCoy's out of eligibility. Squirrel White and Chaz Nimrod transferred this offseason. I have high hopes for Mike Matthews. I made this abundantly clear multiple times. I believe that Mike Matthews was the most slept-on wide receiver in his recruiting class. I think that he was underutilized last year. Based off of practice reports, I'm very high on saying that the number 10 and number 8 will flourish next season. And you got Chris Brazzell back for round 2. And Braylon Stanley's looking to take on a bigger role. And Amari Jefferson joins the crew from Alabama. That's a very good route running prospect. And you brought in Travis Smith, who has high potential as a freshman. And you have multiple other players that are part of this 2025 class. So there's no reason to doubt that you can't find your number 1 receiver. But you got to find somebody this season. It may be Matthews, it may be Brazzell, but somebody has to be that enforcer. And I understand where Tennessee fans come from right now because you're questioning everything. It's January. You ended your year on such a heartbreaking, sour note. You got some wins that were very close calls. You were known for the explosive passing attack. You only scored against a Power 4 opponent 30 points once this season. I get where you come from. But just remember this. It's January. Don't go to any foregone conclusions. Things are going to change in the next several months to where we don't know who's even going to be starting week 1 at certain schools. The transfer portal has a second window opening to where you can target multiple wide receivers or offensive linemen or defensive tackles and better your roster because of it. I understand that you feel a certain way right now because of what wasn't added in versus what was lost. But you got time. Time is sometimes the cruelest joke in all of the world, and sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. And for those who know that Josh Heupel is going 11-10 against top 25 teams or 4-5 against top 10 teams in his career, just let me bring you back to 2008, because I've heard some people talk about how they're upset with what Heupel's done, how they're upset with how Heupel's handled things. And I'm like, okay, well, do you remember when Philip Fulmer stepped down and people thought that was the best thing to happen to the program? Well, BH, before Heupel, Tennessee never finished with more than 9 wins in a season. They missed 6 bowl games. They finished with 5 seasons of 3 wins or fewer in conference play, and they were only ranked inside the AP top 25 once. With Heupel in the program, they've gone 2 10-win seasons, a college football playoff berth, 3 straight finishes in the AP top 25 and college football top 25, and he signed on to the long term. So they're in a really, 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 really good spot, for my opinion. And best of all, people know what they can do. People have seen what the offense can look like, and they also understand that the defense, it may take a step back next year, but they also now know, hey, we got the right coordinator, Tim Banks. Banks did this last year with a lot of players that are young, maybe some veterans that need a second chance. Who's to say that he can't duplicate that success again? Who's to say that he can't turn the corner and be that guy once more? I'm not doubting it. I don't know why anybody would. Tennessee's going to be fine. Tennessee may end up going 9-3 next season. Tennessee may end up going 10-2 next season. They may end up winning the college football playoff for all I know, because the culture is there. Doubting Josh Heupel at your own risk is up to you. I refuse to do that. I refuse to play into that nonsense and that tomfoolery.